There is a specific kind of silence that the most thoughtful people in any room carry with them. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. The silence of someone who has already said everything in their head and decided, for reasons they may not fully understand, that the world outside is not ready to hear it yet. Or perhaps, more honestly, that they are not ready to risk it. You probably know this feeling. You are in a meeting, a conversation, a dinner table discussion, and something moves inside you. A connection between two ideas. A solution no one else has mentioned. A perspective that feels so clear to you that you almost assume everyone else must have already thought of it. And so you wait for someone to say it. But no one does. And then the moment passes. And the idea quietly folds itself back into the interior of your mind, where it lives alongside 1,000 others that never made it out. If this is familiar to you, I want you to know something. This is not a character flaw. It is not laziness or fear dressed up as humility. It is something far more psychologically layered than that. And understanding it might be one of the most quietly important things you do for yourself. Psychologists who study ideation and self-expression have long observed a pattern in certain kinds of minds. The more sophisticated someone's inner world, the higher the threshold they tend to set before externalizing it. In simpler terms, the richer your thinking, the harder it becomes to translate it into something you trust. There is a word for the gap between the idea in your mind and the version of it you can actually express out loud. Researchers sometimes call it the articulation gap. And for deep thinkers, that gap can feel like a canyon. But here is where it gets more interesting. Because the articulation gap alone does not fully explain the silence. There is something else underneath it. Something that psychologists who study vulnerability and shame have written about extensively. The idea is not just hard to say. It is precious. And precious things are fragile. And fragile things can be broken by the wrong response at the wrong moment. When you share an idea that genuinely matters to you, you are not just sharing information. You are handing someone a small piece of your inner architecture, the way you connect things, the way you see the world. And somewhere, often buried beneath layers of composure and competence, there lives a version of you that is still 9 years old, saying something they thought was brilliant and watching an adult's face go flat with indifference. That moment, small as it seemed, wrote something into you. A rule. Keep the good ones close. The world is not always a safe place to be original in. This is not dramatic. This is developmental psychology. The way we learn to protect our inner life in response to early experiences of being dismissed, misunderstood, or unintentionally humiliated is one of the most well-documented patterns in human emotional development. The tragedy is that the protection, which was once genuinely useful, has a tendency to overstay its welcome. Long after the danger has passed, the gate stays closed. And so you become someone who thinks in depth but speaks in shorthand. Someone who, in the right company, can unlock into a version of yourself that surprises even people who have known you for years. And in the wrong company, which is to say most casual company, you smile and nod and carry your richest thoughts home with you like unreturned library books. But here is the turning point. The ideas you are holding back are not just yours. They never were. Ideas, in a very real sense, are not possessions. They are events waiting to happen. A thought that stays sealed inside one person is not a protected treasure. It is an unlit room. The light was always meant to travel. The moment you first had that idea, it was already reaching for something outside of you. The silence you have been keeping is not protection. It is postponement. And at some point, postponement stops feeling like wisdom and starts feeling like a quiet grief. There is a concept in existential psychology called the unlived life. The version of a person that existed in potential but never quite made it into expression. Most people, when they encounter this concept, think of grand ambitions. Career paths not taken, cities not moved to, relationships not pursued. But the unlived life lives in smaller moments too. In the idea that died in your throat during a Tuesday afternoon meeting. In the essay you never wrote. In the insight you almost said out loud, and then swallowed back down because the room felt too indifferent to risk it. What would it mean to start treating your ideas as things that deserve to exist, not because they will be received perfectly, not because everyone will understand them, but simply because they are real, because they arose in a real mind that has spent a real lifetime paying attention? The practical shift is not about becoming louder. It is not about performing confidence you do not have or forcing yourself into rooms that were never built for the way you think. It is something quieter than that. It is about beginning to distinguish between the ideas that feel fragile because they are genuinely not ready, and the ones that feel fragile only because you have been taught to protect them too well. There is a difference between an idea that needs more time and an idea that is already whole, already alive, already waiting at the door. Learning to tell the difference between those two is not a skill anyone teaches you formally, but it is one of the most quietly revolutionary things a person can develop. Because here is what is true of the people who eventually do share their best thinking with the world. They are not the people who stopped being afraid. They are the people who stopped letting the fear be the final word. They shared the idea before they were fully ready. They said the thing before they knew how it would land. And sometimes it fell flat. And sometimes it changed a room. And sometimes it changed a life. But in every case, the idea finally got to exist outside of them, which is what it was always trying to do. You have been thinking your whole life. You have been watching and noticing and connecting things in ways that most people around you have not. That is not nothing. That is not a coincidence. That is a kind of intelligence the world is genuinely short on. Maybe the question is not whether your ideas are good enough. Maybe the question is simply this: how much longer are you willing to be the only one who knows? If something in this touched you, take a moment to share it with someone who thinks deeply and speaks rarely. And if you want to keep exploring the quieter corners of human psychology, subscribing to this channel is the simplest way to stay in that conversation. I'll see you in my next video.